Welcome to Voices of the Learning Network. This is our second episode. As always, I am your intrepid American host, Erin, and I'm so excited to welcome two directors to the conversation today. Now, before I say hello and introduce them, let me give you a little bit of context about our conversation. So, today we're going to talk about planning up. That's right, it's time to plan up. As we start to head into conference season, it's important to be able to use your time because conferences can be pivotal to your career. They can also be a complete waste of time and resources. And I've asked Kim and Paula to join me today so that we can have a real conversation about planning up, using your time, and getting the most out of learning conferences. So I'm going to start with Kim Ellis, AKA the Queen of Everything, but in real life, the vice chair of the Learning Network, chief learning architect of Go Ginger Learning. Good morning, good afternoon, Kim.
Good
Tell me,
afternoon, Erin.
good afternoon. Why learning? Why did you get into learning?
I think like many people, I fell into it. There was an opportunity to become a line trainer at the company where I was working, and that means where you were half on the phones and half doing training. And and I just thought I enjoy coaching people. I enjoy the side by side element, and I enjoy showing people what to do and how to be the best that they can be at the job. So I went for the role and got it, and that was nearly 20 years ago.
Wow, fantastic. I love that there are so many people in learning who started in the business. I just think it goes back to the best people who learn, the best people who train, the best people who teach are the people who do. So I love it. And I am now going to introduce another director from the Learning Network, also an award winning learning designer, Paula Hughes. Paula, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Hi, Erin. I'm good, thank you.
And
Thanks for
Paula,
having me.
yep, so thank you for joining us so much. Tell me, why learning for you?
So a bit similar to Kim, I'm one of those people who fell into L&D. In a previous life, I was an academic, so I was studying history and doing a PhD with a view to being an academic teacher. So I've always been interested in educating and passing wisdom on and writing and that sort of things. But then I took a bit of time out after my PhD, got a job in a call centre, took a secondment as a trainer. Really liked that I was getting to do the education part of it, but I found that I was more drawn to the design and production side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So when a permanent job came up, I thought, well, I'll just see how this goes while I'm waiting for the academic dream job to come up. And then like 13 years later, I'm still doing it. And I'm really enjoying it. And it's nice to write stuff that's actually useful for people, that doesn't sit and gather dust on a library somewhere. So yeah, I think I'm going to keep doing it.
I good. I hope you do. And when you get that dream academic job, just let me know. Let me know if they're also hiring. I've also been waiting for that. All right, ladies. So let's get into our topic. You're brand new to the learning world. Let's say this is your first job. Your company has decided to send you to a learning conference somewhere in the world. You walk in and you're immediately overwhelmed. There's tons of people, tons of booths, sessions that you don't even know where to start. How do you make the most of your time? Can you give our listeners some tips and tricks?
I would say for me, I was already probably 8 or 10 years into my career before I went to my first conference, before I went to my first event. So for me, all I knew about L&D was really what I knew from the company that I had worked for. When I went to my first World of Learning conference, it was like my eyes had suddenly been opened. There was all these people, all these conversations, different perspectives, and all of the connection that I could get from going to a conference which isn't just with the same company or with the same industry.
Yeah, I love that. I know my first conference very much I felt the same way. My eyes were opened. Um, it was so overwhelming to me because there were so many connections. There were so much that I didn't know, so many companies doing things that I never would have dreamed of. And I mean, this is in the dark ages. And so I know I really struggled to manage my time, and also, and maybe I'm going to ask this to you, Paula. When you are brand new, I often felt very shy about going up to someone and speaking to them, maybe
Hmm.
someone who was a CLO, maybe someone who is quote unquote very important. How do you get over that?
Well, I'm glad that you asked me that question, Erin, because I'm still struggling with it, if I'm honest. And have always struggled with it at conferences, like even from attending academic conferences back in the day to going to L&D conferences now.
Yeah.
I would say that the L&D crowd are a lot more welcoming.
Yeah.
What's really struck me is that it doesn't really matter like who you are or your level of seniority. When people are at these conferences, they're talking about what they've done. And if you show interest in what they've done, they are more than happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And I think what's difficult, particularly for us L&D folk, is we're so used to being subject matter experts or having all the answers or being the people who recommend things to other people, that when we go to conferences or to our own kind of learning paths, we feel really vulnerable because we're used to having all the answers. So
Yeah.
there's a bit of there's maybe a little bit of personal prep that you have to do to say, like, you know, you're going to feel vulnerable. It's all right to feel vulnerable. It's all right to feel a bit nervous and unconfident, because you know what, the people that are speaking at the conference probably feel the exact same.
Yeah.
And they're just people at the end of the day. They're there to talk about their work. So if you go and ask them a question about their work, that's what they're there to do. They're there to talk about it. So all I've really found through talking to learning professionals at these events is how generous they are with their time and perspective, and how open and just nice they are and willing to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I remember I was at a conference last fall, and there was someone who I've admired my whole career. And afterwards, I kind of like slunk up and asked her questions. You know, how do you do this? How do you get in? She was so just generous with her time. She even let me take a picture as the true fangirl that I am. So I think that's so important to remember. I agree with you 100%. Learning people are always just so open to share, and we want to all be better. Um, Now, Kim, I'm going to ask you, because I'm always amazed at your organizational capabilities. You're looking at that session guide. Where do you start? What are the best ways to plan the sessions to go to?
Okay, now I've changed a lot since I first started doing the conference circuit. What I used to do was look through all of the sessions, the free sessions, unless I was at the paid side of things, and I would put it all on an Excel spreadsheet. And then I would color code if I had clashes, which was my first choice, and then second choice, which is usually driven by which had seating available.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would print out my Excel spreadsheet and also take a photo of it on my phone so I could check things quickly. What I and what I changed to do,
I love it.
yeah, I was super organized. Plus, I'd always get there about an hour before it'd start, so I could make sure I had a cup of tea, check in my my bag or whatever, and chat to people outside waiting to go in, because you can have some really good conversations there as well. Um,
It's
with
true.
the Learning Technologies app that they brought in, I think it was last year or the year before, I started to plan my sessions on the app, which I found really good for not having to print out sheets and sheets of paper, and I could just check it on the app. So it does change dependent on the conference. But yeah, I like it all written down in front of me, all planned, and that sometimes goes out of the window when I get there and I get into a conversation with somebody.
I knew you were the one to ask this question. I just had a feeling. So let's switch gears a little bit. Now we're very experienced people in L&D. maybe we have our own firms, we're looking for conferences. And I know we have our quote unquote Big Ten conferences and, the ones that everyone goes to, but what do you look for when you're saying, yes, this conference is worth my time and resources? What would be some markers of success? And I'll open it to either Paula or Kim, whoever wants to jump in.
I usually check out the keynote speakers first, because that's a good indication of the quality of the other speakers. So, if you've got a really strong keynote, it's an indication of what other sort of talent they're attracting to speak, but also what sort of tone the conference is going to be. Because, sometimes we in L&D, as in any profession, we chase shiny stuff. And there's usually a flavour of the day, but I kind of tend to look for conferences that aren't just about the shiny stuff, like they'll maybe acknowledge it, but there'll be something really solid underneath it. Yeah, that's what I look for.
Nice. Kim, what do you look at for?
I want to be inspired. So there are sometimes when I go to some of the talks, it ends up being, let's talk about something for 5 minutes and then let me sell you something for 25 minutes. And
yeah,
I want to come away inspired to create or inspired to change something, whether that's my processes or a client's. So I'm looking at, first of all, like Paula says, what's the theme? Who are the speakers? But also, what are they actually going to be telling me? What are they actually talking about? Because you can have a theme which looks great, and then when you get into it, it's just a hidden sales pitch. So for me, it's super important about the actual content, that I'm going to learn something and come away better and inspired.
Nice. Very nice. So we're planning our conference schedules. We've decided where to go. I'm going to ask one more question. What if you want to present? What are some tips you have for people putting together proposals? And I'm actually going to jump into this one. So my first tip is look at what they did last year. Look at those topics. Think about what sessions you would want to go to and that would offer you the most value. And when you're thinking about, this is the session that I would like to present, make sure it's a session that you would actually like to go to, which I know sounds a little bit, shouldn't you do that? But I think so often, again, to the point of being shiny, we pick buzzwords and things that are exciting and new, but maybe that we're really not personally that interested in. So I would say, if you're considering proposing a session, make sure it's something that you're inspired to give. Paula, do you have any tips on putting a proposal together or finding a good topic?
Something that you're passionate about, something that lights that gets the fire in your belly going, something that you're quite happy to wax lyrical about, but also something that you actually know a little bit about. You don't have to be the absolute expert, because what I find really interesting is people who talk about their discovery of something and what something meant to them, or I was chatting to somebody and making a suggestion about how, quite often when we go to these things, we get told what we're doing wrong. We should be doing this, we should be doing that. We all know what we should be doing, but sometimes reality gets in the way of it. So I'm interested in people who are quite pragmatic and tell me how you can do the best you can with what you've got, and how you can maybe just nudge people towards the best practice when you can't implement it in full, because in the real world we deal with constraints. Methodology has to adapt to the constraints that you're working with. So I'm really interested in people who talk about that. So case studies, I love hearing about stuff like that. I think presenting case studies is a really good idea. And then actually presenting where you've had an issue that you've had to work around, and then how you've achieved the results that you've achieved, rather than just lecturing people on what we're doing
Yeah.
wrong. Because I do worry about what that does to people's confidence in the profession as well.
Yeah, I love that. I would not have even thought of case studies, and that's exactly, I think that's such a great thing to present. Kim, you're putting your presentation together. You don't want to PowerPoint people to death. Any tips how to make that presentation interesting and fresh, but not over techy?
Okay, so I was thinking of this while Paula was talking, and he's got some fabulous points, and he's a lot more experienced at the presenting to people in this kind of format than I am, because I haven't actually spoken at a conference before. But saying that, I know what I like. And I like things to be interactive.
Mhm.
My favorite talks that I go to are the ones where you've got something on the chair, or they're getting you to put your hands up, or getting you to answer things. They're the ones where you're not just a passive listener. You're actively engaged
Yeah.
in the conversation. You're actively engaged in the topic. So that would be my best advice. And if I was going to speak at a conference, and never say never, that would be what I would do. I would be getting people up on their feet, or raising the cards in the air to vote on things, or having some kind of fun.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think we need to close the conversation with a little plug for our conference. So, Connect 2023 is happening in London, November 17th. Kim, can you tell me a little bit about this conference and what makes it so different?
This is our flagship event for the year. We, as a learning network, we do lots of regional events and we do lots of webinars, but this is where members and non-members, industry partners, companies, we can all get together and really drive the conversation. And this year it's all around building the future. So what does the future look like for us, for L&D, for our organizations, for our clients? What does it look for us? What can we do? How can we affect the change that needs to happen? And how can we keep up the pace with change that's already happening? I'm super excited about the Connect this year.
And Paula, why are you going to Connect this year?
So I have never been to Connect before, because I joined the network just before a couple of years before lockdown, and wasn't really confident enough to go to conferences at that point. But I've been itching to go for a couple of years, and obviously with COVID, it hasn't been on. So this is my first chance to go, and I'm really excited to be there as an attendee and as a director, just to get to meet lots of people who I haven't had the chance to meet before. And put some faces to names, because I probably chat to a lot of people on the Slack channel, but I've never met them in real life. So it'd be really nice. And one of the things that I'm personally setting a challenge for myself to do is knowing how daunting it is going to a conference, especially if you're going on your own, and not really knowing who any friendly faces are. Like, I'm going to be that friendly face for people. So if anybody's nervous about going, just look for me, and I'll see you right.
I love it. And, this is a one-day event where you can just be focused. Put your computer away, talk to people, engage with the debates, go to the drinks event afterwards, just spend time with people. I mean, it's so rare these days that we can just focus and spend time and think. You don't have to spread your attention over 3 days. You don't have to beg to get out of the office for a long extended time. It's one day where you can think about learning and the future and what it could look like and meeting your peers. It's a great event. And listen, if meeting an American is something that's on your bucket list and you've never done it, I'll be there. So you can cross that off your bucket list. But like Paula, I really strive to be a friendly face and being able to help people get to where they need to get. And to Kim's point, start those conversations early. Get to the sessions 15 minutes early. Talk to the people around you. That's really what makes conferences so impactful to your career. Ladies, any parting thoughts? Anything else you want to tell our audience, who I know is right now signing up for Connect? The link is in our show notes. Anything else you want to say before we say goodnight today?
I would say book your tickets before September to get the best deal available.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim and Paula. I am a little still overwhelmed with the Excel spreadsheet, but hey, I mean, everything is an inspiration. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk to Caleb from MindBoost and really think about how to build the future of work. Be prepared to be inspired. Here's Caleb. Caleb, introduce yourself, please, and tell me why learning?
Wow, that's a big subject. Well, I'm Caleb Foster. I'm Chief Learning Geek at MindBoost. And a little bit about MindBoost. We're on a mission to rid the world of dull click next e-learning so businesses can create the best learning experiences possible. And I guess if that sounds something that resonates with you, then come and visit us.
Fantastic. I want to make learning as unboring and geeky as I possibly can. Caleb, when you think about the future of learning, what do you think are going to be some buzzwords, go points, things we need to start thinking about now?
I think this is it's really pertinent at the minute, actually. So there's a lot of talk about AI automation and how that's going to replace things. I actually think that the learning agenda should be no different from what it's always should have been, which is how do we connect with people's emotions and feelings. And actually that's where our human superpower excels, really. So if we can draw that out of people, and actually the best learning experiences come from drawing that emotion out, that's really where I think we ought to focus our energies.
Yeah. Well, how do you do that? How do you take compliance training and make people feel emotional or attached to it?
Yeah.
I know I put you on the spot.
No, and that's really where that's a space that we're really excelling in, is understanding what drives a person to connect with a subject. It's tapping into that emotional hook, making it relevant, making it, close to the heart. And if you connect people emotionally, then they start believing in that subject. And if they then believe in that subject, there's a high probability that they're going to go and act on that. They become more curious to find out more, and they go above and beyond. So, it's through not just storytelling, but connecting with people rather than conveying information.
I love that. And I think storytelling is so impactful. It's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, is really to hear people's voice. How do you make space for storytelling in a very busy day? How do you convince a business that, yeah, storytelling is not only going to train, quote unquote, train people, but it's going to retain people?
Yeah. I mean, how often these days do you get a request to say, we need this health and safety or data security converting into a piece of e-learning? And the first conversation is about, this is the content we need conveying. And actually what we do and what we challenge our clients to do is to say, what's the emotion you want somebody, what's out of somebody, what's the feeling that you want somebody to leave with as a result of doing this learning? And when I say learning, that could be something that takes 60 seconds, it could take 15 minutes, but and that's a very different question to, okay, give us all the information you want conveying and we'll wrap it up in a piece of digital learning. And we would much rather have that challenging conversation, because there's no point in investing a load of money in transferring one medium to another if it's going to do nothing for the client's businesses, or get somebody really connected with that subject.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So we're bringing the human back into learning. What tools are making this easy for you?
Well, I think conversation, lots of understanding what that means to people, and actually so it's not rocket science. It's connecting with people, having great conversations, finding out the backstory to people, what motivates them. It's so much broader than just having a conversation about creating a piece of digital learning. It's about understanding what motivates people, what's the culture in the organization, where are people at the minute, trying to convince the client sometimes that this approach is so much more rewarding and richer than just presenting information.
I love it. And I'm going to just go right on the back of that comment. So in our previous podcast, we are talking about going to conferences, connecting with people. Can you give us any tips and tricks of making the most out of your conference experience?
Well, I guess the first thing is why. So why are you going there? What's your purpose? What I think everyone needs a purpose as a business, but also as an individual. And that's something I've been challenging myself on recently. So what do I want to be famous for individually? I don't want this to sound really morbid, but those people that come, after you've gone, the people that are there, what's that lasting memory of you individually? And I guess, that's the first thing. Have that really clear in your heads. And then you're going to an event with a purpose in mind. And if you've got that, how do you then make that really simple and a memorable story? So again, I'm going to challenge you then, Erin. So what's our purpose? What did I say our purpose was?
So our purpose is understanding how to connect, make the most, bringing in human elements, and making learning real again. I think that's our purpose.
And I think how you distill that, we've distilled it in terms of Mind Boost is to rid the world of dull click next e-learning. And if you focus on, right, everyone will tell you focus on the positives, but sometimes you have to focus on the negative to then really resonate with the positive that you want to get out of it. So rather than me tell you a grand story about how we create amazingly, enriching digital learning, I'll connect with going, what I really hate is dull click next e-learning, but I love creating, amazing e-learning. But if you can sell that story in a real succinct way, people will go, yeah, I get it. I'm on board with that. But that's the first thing. So be really clear on that and have a real simple story that you can converse with people on. But, what's the purpose of going to the networking events? And if you're a freelancer or you run a business, then do not go there with the purpose to say, I want to make a load of new clients and I want to sell stuff, because you will be really disappointed. It's really, does it join with your purpose? I want to grow my community of like-minded people. And if something comes out of that, then that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's such a switch in mindset for so many people. The idea that connections are not commodities, they're ways to build you. Yeah. It's not let's see how many people we can get on LinkedIn to follow us, but it's how many deep conversations we can have.
Yeah, and some of that, not everyone will want to connect with you. Not everyone will be on that same journey, and I guess that's the the really important thing. So it's also important to become comfortable with the rejection. Nobody likes that idea and people shy away from it, and therefore you get this inertia. And that's a mind shift change to say, I'm really comfortable with people rejecting me or not returning my calls. And that's fine, because they're just not on the same journey. They're not part of the tribe. They're not on the same, purpose as me. But when somebody does then connect with you, it's so much more rewarding. And that is a real, again, mind shift that I start using now to say it's fine. Not everyone's on the same journey.
Yeah, I love that. And as we talked earlier, it's hard, and it's, you're vulnerable, and there are people who don't respond, and people who aren't able to connect with you after the session. But to your point, it helps you define what's good, what's bad, what's going to drive you. So I think that's a great thing to remember and a great way to shift our minds.
Yeah.
Caleb, any parting thoughts for our audience as they're getting ready to shape the future of learning? Anything that we should take away and really let us drive our day to day?
Really echoing what I said at the start, actually. So don't get overloaded with all the new technology, because people like simple and people like connection. We're human people. We're humans. People like people, and so lean into that, and that's our superpower.
I love it. Welcome to Minute With. Today we're speaking to our Vice Chair, Kim Ellis. Kim, let us hear your minute.
Thank you for having me. So I became the Vice Chair in November 2022, and this is my third year on the board. I've been on the network and skirting around the edges for about 6 years. And then when the pandemic hit, I had the idea of creating the coffee mornings, the virtual coffee mornings, because I figured everybody was going a bit stir crazy, being locked up at home constantly. And so I just wanted a space where people within our industry could come and talk to each other and connect and just de-stress, have a rant, have a moan, bounce ideas. If they were used to working in a collaborative environment and now they were stuck on their own, I wanted them to be able to just share and collaborate. After doing a few of those, I was then co-opted onto the board and started looking after the newsletter. So I love having the capability to get involved in so many different areas. Being the vice chair means that, yes, I'm responsible for a specific area, but I also tie into a lot of the other areas. So I have a much wider view of everything that goes into building the learning network and making it this great space and this great community.
Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us today on Voice of the Learning Network. We've had a great conversation about how to plan up, make the most of your conference time, and start planning your calendar now. Join us every month for another conversation that focuses on you, that really helps you take practical advice, build your career, and build the future of learning. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.